coming up.
She wasn't just some kind of trash they throw in a ditch. So whoever did this is a monster. It is a monster, not a human being.
For Vault Studios, I'm Will Johnson. You're listening to The Daily Crime.
Sheriffs have identified a burned body of 31-year-old Melissa Whitis of Frankfort. Her body was discovered in a ditch in the Richburg area on September 20th, 100 miles from where she's believed to have been in North Carolina 3 days earlier.
That report from October 2019, a few weeks after the body of Melissa Whitis was found in a ditch in rural South Carolina. I'm joined by reporter Indira Eskieva from WCNC in Charlotte, North Carolina. Indira, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Indira, let's go back to the fall of 2019 and what we know about the disappearance and then the discovery of Melissa Whitis's body in South Carolina.
I'll just first tell you a little bit about Chester County, South Carolina, which is where Melissa's body was found. The area where her body was found is a very remote part of Chester County. You have some homes out there, but it's the kind of place where you need probably easier to get into your car and drive to the next house over. So it's very remote, very spread out homes. And it just so happened that that day, September 20th, 2019, news reporters were already in that county to do a story on a separate case. So it just so happened that that day we also received an alert saying that a body was found in a ditch on Lizzie Melton Road, which is, again, a remote part of Chester County. So by the time we came out there and responded, SLED agents, the Chester County Sheriff's Office, the coroner, they were all out there. So the state in which this body was found is really why I've been covering this story and have stayed on this story for so long. It really bothered me. Her body was found in a ditch burned. It was so badly burned that they couldn't identify her using DNA samples or fingerprints as they would traditionally use whenever a body is found. So, they find this body. It's a woman. They can't identify her. In a few days, the Chester County Sheriff's Office actually releases photos of tattoos that they were able to find on her body. One tattoo in particular said Ethan and Emily. So they were kind of hoping that the community would be able to see these tattoos, maybe her family or friends, and recognize who she was. But that didn't work either. So it was another few weeks, and how they finally were able to identify her is actually pretty crazy. She had a medical device implanted in her head. And detectives used the serial number off of that device. They were able to trace it to its manufacturer in Europe. And that manufacturer was able to tell them that that device came from a patient in Kentucky. So then they got into contact with a hospital in Kentucky and were finally able to identify her. So it took weeks to figure out that the body belonged to 31-year-old Melissa Whitis. She was a mother of 4 from Frankfort, Kentucky.
That is a sort of a wild way to identify someone, but you do hear about it. And if, the tattoos didn't do it, then something like that, sometimes devices are used. And in the big scheme of things, they were able to get an ID on a body that had been badly burned relatively quickly.
Yes, but at the same time, the sheriff of the Chester County Sheriff, Max Dorsey, said that they lost a lot of vital time because they weren't able to identify her right away. It took weeks, and that did not help the investigation.
Sure. So for an investigation in those critical first few days and weeks, I can understand that. And so they had this ID. Where did it go from there? And in fact, let me back up. Let me ask. She was a 31-year-old mother, you said, from Kentucky. My understanding is there was really no one who understood or knew why, at least that we've heard from yet, why she had ended up in South Carolina.
That's right. And the reason why when they released the tattoos, no one spoke up and said, hey, we know her, was because she's not from South Carolina. Her mom says she did not have any family or friends or any relation or connection to South Carolina. So they really don't know how she ended up from Kentucky landing in South Carolina, how her body ended up here. Her mom, Rosetta Turner, has been like a big advocate for her daughter. You know, she's desperate for justice, for answers. And she told me that Melissa did not say who she was leaving with or why. She did say that Melissa was going through some personal battles, including mental health problems. And she didn't say why she was leaving or even that she was leaving or where she was going. So the big question remains is who did she leave Kentucky with and why?
Melissa had a family. Melissa had a big family that loved her, that supported her, that's here for her. We always include Melissa. Her picture stands tall in the top of our Christmas tree. We all gather around. We still celebrate Melissa like she was here.
So again, that was back September of 2019. Remains are found. She's identified in October. You have, as you've mentioned, talked to her mother and also investigators. But to this day, no real persons of interest, any other leads, anything at this point that we've heard about.
No, nothing that has been released to the public. The sheriff does assure us that it's not a cold case. Detectives know that Melissa Whitis was seen in Kentucky, Virginia, and Mocksville, North Carolina. The sheriff tells us this is not a cold case. He assures us that they are working with investigators in other states to figure out what happened and who did this. But her family, I mean, it's been years already, a few years, and they still don't have any answers. No one's been charged. No one has been arrested.
Have you ever heard anything about cell phone records or anything like that along the way?
I've been told, right, when it comes to, I've heard that there are things you can use like tracking, any sort of signal that was out there. But one, it was very remote. It's a very remote part of the county. And two, the time that passed, so much time had passed and it was such a remote part that a lot of tools that detectives would normally use were not used in this investigation.
Indira, let me go back to what you said at the very beginning. You said reporters were in that area for another story, and this was South Carolina. You're a reporter in Charlotte. How far away was this rural part of South Carolina from the station where you work?
It's about 40 miles from Charlotte.
So not too far. This would be a story of local concern.
Right. It is still in our viewing area.
Where can anyone who might have information about this case, where can they reach out? Obviously, she was from Kentucky, but her body was found in South Carolina.
The Chester County Sheriff's Office would be the best place. They are the ones investigating and leading this investigation. What they're really trying to do is track where she was and who she was with. So, it's been a few years. People may have forgotten, but if you saw a woman who, maybe something didn't sit right in September, August of 2019, please reach out to the Chester County Sheriff's Office.
All right, Indira Eskieva, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you again. I mean, this is one case that I'm glad that you're highlighting it. I mean, this is one that I'm kind of surprised that more people are not talking about. And to me, it's so disturbing that someone did this and could still be out there. So thanks again for shedding light on this one.
Thanks for listening to The Daily Crime. Be sure to check out our weekly show, True Crime Chronicles, available wherever you listen to podcasts. For Vault Studios, I'm Will Johnson.